Welcome to the Feeling Asian podcast, the podcast where two Asians talk about their feelings. I'm Young Mi Mayer.
And I'm Brian Park.
And we're gonna get right into the podcast. This is our new format. There's no meat at the top. We just get balls deep immediately.
Young Mi, I think at this point it should just become a bit because we introduced the new format 6 months ago, and every week we keep reminding our listeners that it's the new format.
You don't want to get confused. I don't want to confuse the fucking followers, the listeners. So we're gonna introduce our guest right away. I'm very, very excited. I'm gonna introduce the guest this week because this is a dear friend of mine, a very long time. I think I've known this person since 2008, 9, possibly, and I am going on record and saying that this is the naturally funniest person I've ever met in my life. He didn't want me to say that, but he can always make me laugh. He is also the co-host of the Dave Chang podcast. David Chang sounds so weird. Dave Chang, but the one that's not Dave Chang, among other things. They're like, oh my God, it's Dave. It's not Dave. It's the other one. It's the other one. Also a phenomenal food writer, and former editor-in-chief of Lucky Peach magazine, a cult classic food magazine. Everyone, give us your ears for Chris Ying.
Woo, woo. Hey. I was looking at the run of show you sent me here, and you guys have it the outline for the podcast. These guys are professionals. They're being like, oh, we're just getting balls deep right away, we're just winging it. But they're very professional. Let me.
What
tell
are you talking
you.
about? Yeah, we sent an outline.
Wow,
very professional. An outline is a professional thing to do, and you have this intro section of hosts introduce Chris Ying as between 1 and 5 minutes. And I was just wondering, like, I got less than 1 minute of introduction, but like, what would 5 minutes? Who got 5 minutes of introduction for you guys?
Somebody that's Dave Chang, the person that's not the other one.
Not the
let's redo the intro, Brian. Delete that. I'm gonna do another intro. The other one.
Okay.
Not Dave Chang.
Great. And then
I'll pretend.
And then I will include, even though I met Chris Ying just now, I will include my section into the intro as well. So kick us off,
I'm
Young
so
Mi.
excited.
Okay, here we got a solid 2 more minutes left. So everyone, I hope you're ready for the guest this week because this person is I don't even know how to say it, naturally funniest person I've ever met in my life. Including comedians, but that goes without saying because comedians are not funny in real life. I don't know if you know that.
Yes.
Also, an extraordinary food writer, former editor-in-chief of Lucky Peach magazine, a cult classic, and host of the Dave Chang podcast, not Dave Chang, the other one.
Dave Chang. And also, according to Wikipedia, he was a publisher for McSweeney's legendary humor imprint, founded by Dave Eggers. And before that,
not Dave Eggers,
undergraduate student at UC Berkeley. Give it up for Chris Ying, everyone.
Boo!
He has worked with a lot of important people.
I've only worked with crazy people named Dave. That's the only kind of people I've worked for.
How is it being on a podcast that's like the name of it is not you? Like,
it's
what if
weird.
this
It's fucking weird, right? It was like if your thing was like if your guys' show was called like Feeling Mexican, hosted by two Asians who have feelings. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's weird. Somebody asked me the other day about our podcast and they're like, so what is your podcast? And when somebody calls it your podcast and then you say, my podcast is called The Dave Chang Show, you really truly feel like a fucking idiot. It's true.
Wait, how long have you been doing that podcast? I didn't even know.
When the pandemic started and you couldn't do anything anymore, we started to make a podcast and Dave ran out of things to do and he was like, just talk to me. You and I will just talk. And now it's been 2 years. And so we just talk about nonsense on there.
So the podcast started in the beginning of the pandemic?
It had been going for about a year, I think, before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then we just started, we got on and we were just laughing and crying and holding each other, basically. It was the whole show.
Wow.
But I've known Young Me
Basically
for
us,
even
Young Me.
longer than that. And I was thinking about coming on this show,
Yeah.
feeling Asian, and I
You
was
were.
like, you and I have been to real Asia together even. That's how far
Oh my
back
god.
we go.
And that was a fun. Oh my god, I want to just talk about our old memories, and Brian's just going to laugh. Our goal today is who can make Brian laugh the most, and I know Chris is going to win. No, that was so funny. We went all over China together in a van where you had explosive diarrhea the entire time.
It's true, but I mean that's just sort of all the time. But my strongest memory is like we brought my mom along as like our guide. We were working on like a mission Chinese food book, and my mom was like just touring around with us. And I remember one day, Young Me, what's that naked baby tattoo you have?
The dart. I have a Henry Darger tattoo.
You should fucking fully scandalize my mom because you have a naked baby on you. She was like, "Look at this naked baby you have on your arm," and you're like, "Yeah, it's like a naked person."
Was your mom the person that we went to this secret pop-up in Hong Kong, the Szechuan pop-up? Was your mom the person that the owner of this pop-up, Brian? His wife is like a opera singer, right? Like a, and so after dinner she performs, and she started performing, and your mom was fucking cracking the fuck up. She was like, ah! Like just like scream laughing. She was trying to hold it in for a second, but she absolutely lost it. Legend.
It's important to note that she was not an opera singer. She was like a Peking opera singer. She was like a Chinese opera singer. And so like my mom was like she was like, "What the fuck are we doing?" My mom was like, "Why are we in this like basement eating Sichuan food in Hong Kong? There's other things to eat. Who are these idiots that brought me here?" And then this woman comes out and just starts like wailing. And my mom couldn't take it anymore. But yeah, that's how far we go back. We go all the way back to Peking Opera,
so many
Sichuan
funny
pop-up.
stories. So many funny stories, Chris. I can't wait to shoot the shit with you and make Brian laugh. Our goal of this episode.
I'm looking forward to it. But Young Me, how are you feeling before we dive into the fun stuff?
Actually, ever since I saw Chris on here, and I was like in a really good mood because I really enjoy his company. But before make them laugh, Chris, make them laugh. But before, I've been feeling super fucking depressed because I now this is gonna seem very inauthentic, but I've been like crying for the last 3 days, and I've been really upset because I don't know, Chris, if you heard the news. This woman, Christina Yuna Lee, was stabbed to death in her home. Did you hear about this, Chris?
Are you guys? Is this a real thing? This is a hard left turn. Okay.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I feel like. Well, I want to say this because I've been crying about this for like the last 3 days. I had the worst anxiety attack because this woman lived around the corner from me, and somebody followed her in and stabbed her in her home. It was just this like very disturbing story. On paper, we're like. We live very similar lives, and I don't want to like center myself in this other tragedy that obviously is not about me, but I was just like, she literally lives around the corner from me in this a building that looks exactly the same as mine, and she was coming home and she just let somebody in behind her. I do that all the fucking time because I don't want my vibes to be shitty, which is so stupid. Obviously you shouldn't let people in your building, but I'm just like, I don't want somebody to get mad at me. I'm just gonna let them in. Do you know what I mean? And
I think that if I were to picture, like, actually, like, that's like the most Young Me thing in the entire world. If I were to like picture you doing anything in the entire world, if I was like to try to remember you, I'd be like, it'd be Young Me letting in the person behind her into an apartment building. Like,
and apologizing that I didn't hold the door open all the way. Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, dude, that like, not to, again, I don't want to center myself in the story, but I was like, that could definitely have just been me. 100%. And it's just like such a gruesome, it was like such a gruesome death. And it's like, I don't know why it's made me cry so hard. And also get really scared. Like the other night I was like lying in bed and I was like, I'm terrified. Like what if someone fucking breaks in? You know what I mean? So it's really affected my mental health, and I'm not exactly sure why, but then I've seen a lot of Asian people online saying that they felt the same way. Like this particular story really struck them. So
have you guys always been afraid, or like, do you feel as though you're more afraid of violence now than you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, since the pandemic.
Yeah.
It's weird, right?
Absolutely.
I'm terrified of violence all the time. Like I'm so scared of it. I'm always scared of like, I mean, it's not like you took it here, so I'll go there with you. Like, you know, like a 70-year-old Asian man was murdered on my block too. Like, you know, he was punched to death. And I remember like feeling really scared of walking down the street. I'd never in my entire life been like, oh, I'm afraid to walk down the street. And that feeling really sucks.
Well, Chris, I got attacked on the street, mildly attacked. I don't want to like some guy like pinned me against the wall at night.
What?
And he was like, yeah, a few months ago. Oh, probably almost a year ago now. And he was like, I feel like he was about to hit me. But then there was like this car parked right next to us with two people in the front. And I think he saw that and like went away. I don't know. But it was like terrifying. It was at night.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then, you know, so it's like, and then I remember I was telling somebody about it and they're like, well, was it an Asian thing? And I was like, I don't know, dude. I was fucking pinned up against the wall. Shut the
you
fuck
didn't
up,
ask
you
him.
know?
You weren't like pinned against the wall.
Yeah, I
You're
didn't
like,
think of
excuse me,
him.
is this an Asian thing?
Is it a woman? Is it a woman thing or an Asian thing?
You're like, I'm cool if this is a woman thing, but if this is an Asian thing, I have to object, sir. I don't appreciate this. This is not okay if this is an Asian thing. This fucking sucks.
Oh my God. Well, thanks for making me laugh because like that was it. Honestly, I feel so much better talking to you, Chris. I just highly recommend everyone becoming friends with Chris Ying. He's very funny. He just makes you laugh about being attacked on the street. I know.
It's been so long.
How are you feeling, Brian?
Similarly, I've been feeling pretty blah lately. And I feel that, well, up top, listeners, if you have any, or Chris, if you have any recommendations for non-fiction books, slide in my DMs. I feel like my brain, I haven't been nurturing my brain. I feel very blah, just watching trash television all day, every day. And in conjunction, I feel like more and more of my friends are moving to LA for like, obviously for like career things. And you know, Youngmi, we're here in New York, and I slightly feel like I'm being left behind, and it's making me kind of spiral a little bit. Like, oh, what am I? Am I doing the right things? Like, everyone seems to be going for, like, you know, going to sunny LA where the greener pastures are, and what am I doing here? You know, being scared on the subway all the time. But
you feel like you're being left behind because you should also be moving to LA, or just because your friends are literally leaving you? Because they're literally leaving you. That's true.
Literally leaving me, but also there is a career component baked into it too, where I'm like, wait, I feel like this is where the progression of my career should take me, and it's just taking me a little bit longer. And with each person that decides to go to LA, it's become more prescient. Like, all right, let's get it together here. I'm supposed to be going to LA at some point, right? This is how it's supposed to be.
What's your snap answer? First answer, if I ask you, why don't you move to LA?
Part of it is like a pride thing, because I moved to New York from LA, and so there's actually nothing stopping me from going back to LA, but I moved to New York to pursue comedy in earnest, and then now I would only want to return to LA if there's something waiting for me there, sort of scenario. Like, it's just a pride thing. I could go there because everything's remote at this point, but I'm saving it for myself, basically. It's just my ego that's holding me back.
Youngmi, do you hate the idea of Brian moving to LA?
No, I feel like we could do, like, what I'm here, like, this is my assumption. I'm not even here. Like, I feel like my assumption why Brian probably isn't moving to LA is like, you want a job, so you have like this like thing to be like that. That's why I'm moving to LA. Is that?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But as somebody who moved from LA, Brian, you also know that nobody in LA has a job and nobody's doing anything.
Because I feel like probably your friends, correct me if I'm wrong, but your friends are moving there because they get a job, and so now you're like, is that what you're feeling? Like, oh, I want a job to move to LA too. Me personally, I don't feel like being left behind, because I feel like as many people move to LA, they also move to New York from LA. So I kind of feel like this, like this, but I totally know what you mean, Brian. I wish I had a big boy job too.
You know who's you guys? I mean, like
Dave Chang.
The only person being left behind, young me, you know this. The only people being left behind are people who live in the fucking Bay Area. Nobody's coming here. Everybody's leaving here. Everybody who leaves here is like everybody who you left. Everybody who leaves is just like fuck you, San Francisco. You sucked. I hated you the whole time I was there.
No, but I feel like all the tech people are there now. Now it's like
great, cool. Right. That's great.
Fucking biggest losers on. No offense if you work in tech.
All the product managers are there, Chris. What's not to love?
Look, my product has never been better managed than it is right now. But all of my cool, fun friends have left. You know, it does suck.
Well, I hear Austin's nice, and he moves to Austin. I feel like that's popular these days, Chris.
I will kill myself. I will kill myself before I move to Austin. Why the fuck would I don't even know what's going on.
They would find me and Young Me in a double suicide if we moved to Austin.
Why did we move here? No one made us do this.
Brian just suggested it on the podcast. We both left.
Now we're dead. Wait, Chris, how are you feeling? Besides hating where you live,
I honestly felt nervous about this podcast today. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like you guys have like the cool version of what I do. You guys are like the cool version of a duo podcast.
No offense, but if there's one thing that Dave Chang isn't, it's cool. And I will go on record. I will go on record and say that. I'm sorry. He is the most famous chef in the world. Okay.
Really?
Man,
because seeing how much my mom talks about Dave Chang, I think he's pretty fucking cool.
He's the coolest.
Brian's Korean mom. Yes, the gauge of coolness.
No, I feel
he thinks he's cool.
Yeah. I don't know if he thinks he's cool. I think he knows deep down. Maybe everybody thinks they're cool. I felt nervous. I not only because, I mean, generally, you know, when you go on like a podcast, you're on some like NPR thing, and you're like, well, this is gonna be fine. I'll just make a dad joke, and this old lady will laugh, and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But like, I was nervous coming on with comedian people, and I haven't seen you in so long, Young Me. It felt a little weird, honestly, if we're being truly honest about our feelings.
Yeah, I haven't seen you in a long time.
Yeah, I haven't seen you in a long time.
I think I was at your wedding. Is that the last time I saw you in person?
Yeah, it has to be. It has to be the last time.
Wow, that was a nice wedding.
Time. It was fun, but it's weird, you know? We saw each other so often, and then you...
Now you have like 9 kids. How many kids do you have?
9 kids. I'm a grandfather now.
I'm sorry. I lost track. You have 2 kids, right?
2 kids, and I'm not a grandfather, Brian. What the fuck?
Wow.
No, I have 2 kids. No, it feels weird to... I feel... You're again, the little run of show outline you sent me had these questions, and it sent me down a little spiral, and we can talk about it later, but I was like, oh, what am I ashamed of? Oh man, lots of things. Well, and one of them was like, I'm about to face my shame and not connecting with my friends like Young Me. Feels bad.
I know. I feel like we have such a good time when we hang out. And I feel the same way. I'm like, you're such a good friend. I feel like we've always like clicked. And yeah, I do feel bad. Brian talks about this a lot on the podcast. Like he feels bad because he doesn't keep up with his like old friends. And a lot of times Brian will talk about it, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Who cares about old friends? But now I'm like, yeah, I should hang out with Chris. I should.
No. Let's not.
What am I supposed to do? Call you?
No. Let's not.
Call you. I'm gonna call you at 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Like what? Who does that, right?
Please don't call me. Let's promise each other that we'll never call each other.
I will never call you.
But when
I'd rather
we
move
see each
to
other,
Austin.
Yeah, let's never call each other. But I mean, I don't know. What are we supposed to talk about now? We talked about our feelings. Well,
so I was telling Brian about our history as friends, and then I told him that you were essential in the beginning or the establishing of Mission Street Food, which is like old cult favorite restaurant thing. Do you want to just talk about that? Like, can you talk about that? Because I feel like you were one of the very early food writer / tech Twitter user people that really were on
let's
top
just redo
of
the
that
intro.
movement.
Wow. Let's redo the intro.
So
okay,
not
are
only
ready?
are you one of the funniest
the first
natural
Asian
human beings.
I was one of the first Asians on Twitter.
You are also an OG Twitter food person.
First Yelp elite Asian to ever exist.
Wow.
You
way
were
to bury
right
the lead,
I was
Youngmi.
the first Asian.
Yelp elite.
I was the first Asian on Twitter. I was the first
Yes.
Asian to ever reach Yelp elite status. Yes, that's true. No,
but seriously,
Well,
you were
first
like
Asian on Yelp elite is redundant, so you are the first Yelp elite.
Right. We're waiting for the first non-Asian Yelp elite. I don't know. We were just talking about San Francisco. This is like an old man thing to say. But tell me if you disagree, Youngmi. I feel like when we were all living in San Francisco, and this is 2008, 2007, 8.
Yes.
And we started this restaurant, Mission Street Food, which was Anthony Mint, the chef, decided one day. This is actually, I looked this up. This was a month before Roy Choi ever started his Kogi truck.
Wow.
Anthony
Receipts.
walked Anthony walked up to like this Antojitos truck that was parked at the subway, the BART station in San Francisco, and said like, hey, it's Anthony, so it's more like, hey, I'm a cook, and I was wondering if I could sublet your truck for $300 and just use it. And the guy was like, oh, okay, do whatever the fuck you want. And so he had like one of these first sort of like non-genuine, authentic food trucks, right? Like chefy food trucks.
Yeah, and I feel like this is like right at the beginning. Like I feel like way before this blew up, and there was a fucking Food Network show called Food Trucks or whatever.
Yeah, totally,
right.
way before this.
And I feel like, sorry to interrupt your story,
I
but I feel like this is a good time to put in, because you did the Anthony Mint voice. Anthony Mint is a ripped Asian man. He has probably like 40-inch biceps, but he is very quiet and nerdy. And so Chris and I were always like, he like secretly lifts like weights. We don't know how he got ripped.
He's extremely ripped and extremely quiet.
That's how it is usually, though. The extremely ripped Asians are quiet. Real G's move in silence.
Yeah, he saves all his strength for lifting weights. But what I was trying to say about this time was like, I feel like this was the coolest time to live in San Francisco. Like things were interesting.
Yeah,
you could do stuff like this. The Mission was like not completely overrun and hadn't been sort of like commodified into this like facsimile of itself. And like, long story short, it started as this food truck, and you could do things like just walk up to a truck and say, can I sublet it, and then just start cooking on the street, right? Like that was the sort of possibility that was in the air. And it was like, it's probably this late 2008 era, and like in the 90s, those are probably the cool times to live in San Francisco. And then from there, we did get yelled at by a realtor. Like some real estate dude was like, "You're mucking up my street. All you goddamn whippersnappers out here eating your tacos." And so Anthony got booted after a month. Yeah. And then he just decided to go up and down the street in the Mission, like just walking into restaurants asking if he could sublet them. And so we walked into Longshan, like this Chinese restaurant that had like, I don't know, Youngmi, like 3 people a day would eat there. Just like the last place anybody was ever walking into. And he just walked in and said, "Can I borrow this restaurant?" And they just started letting him do it. And every week we would have a guest chef come in and cook. And so like I cooked in that kitchen with him. I cooked in that truck with him for a while, for as long as I could, until like it was pretty clear that I was not a very good cook. But that's where I met Youngmi.
Yeah, and you were like line cooking, but you also had like a important job at McSweeney's. Remember McSweeney's, that fancy office? Yeah,
very important unpaid internship at McSweeney's.
Oh right,
it was one of the most important jobs in America. I think that like in the pandemic, I would have been an essential worker because I was that internship. That's true, but that's where we met. You were Youngmi was like waiting tables. I was pretending to cook in the back, and like. I just mean it was fun because we could just like make believe, and whatever we made believe was real, and people paid for it. It was
and the Mission
is crazy.
And I don't think people know about Mission Street Food. Was that Mission Street Food? Like every week there was a guest chef, and it was like from a popular restaurant. And it'd be like a fancy
restaurant. Like an OG of the taco truck, not the food truck movement. back in whenever this was.
The food pop-up.
Damn.
Yeah. It was nuts.
I was an undergrad at UCLA when Roy Choi gave a talk because of Kogi Truck.
Oh my God. You were an undergrad when Roy Choi was a speaker at your school. Oh my God, I'm so old. That's insane.
Wow.
No, okay, wait. So was this
you basically were just like, you know what he just said? He basically was like, oh yeah, I studied that history in school. Like the thing you were talking about, I learned about in school. You know,
we're old.
Grandpa. Cool.
No, wait, but was this purely an overhead thing, like subletting these spaces, or was there like a conceptual element to it too? Like, did you kind of know, like, oh, if we serve this kind of food out of a food truck, there's some novelty to it, and like hipsters are gonna like this?
I don't know. It's like Anthony is super ripped, super quiet, and just completely is super insane. He's just like one of the craziest people I've ever met. Yeah. And I don't think it occurs to him necessarily at any point that he was like, I'm doing something cool, because second only to Dave Chang in uncoolness is probably Anthony Min.
Kind of. I feel like Anthony's like so uncool, but that he is fucking cool though. You know, he has one outfit. He wears it every day.
Oh, that's fucking cool.
That man is a man of ideas. He is a true entrepreneur. Remember when?
Truly.
Okay, so and then remember like one of the early days of Mission Chinese when it switched over from Mission Street Food, and then we just went with one concept, Mission Chinese. Mm-hmm. We had this buyout because they fucking wrote about it in the fucking Chronicle for some godless reason, but it was like a dive bar restaurant, right? And we had this buyout with this like extremely wealthy woman. Do you remember this?
I don't remember. Wait, somebody bought out the evening at Mission Chinese Food?
Lunchtime, even sadder. Because during the day, it's rough. And she was so fucking wealthy. Okay, this is the signs of wealth. I know Asians are listening to this. Everybody in her birthday party had a Birkin, and she had one made of alligator skin. We're talking $50,000 handbag, right? This bitch put that bag on the fucking carpet at Mission Chinese. Chris, do you remember the fucking carpet?
Well, that's one of the primary reasons that like eating at lunch was not a cool time to eat at Mission Chinese food. Like you shouldn't see what's down there.
And there was a lot, there were times where sometimes people would just walk up to the glass door and have a explosive diarrhea on the glass door. That happened once during service. Like things like that were happening. But this fucking rich woman putting her fucking $50,000 bag on the carpet, she brought like an absurd amount of like Cristal rosé, and we Googled it, and it was like $1,000 a bottle or something. She brought like a fucking, but there's like 10 women, and she brought like 20 cases or fucking. It's like, and one of the guests was that blonde woman that works for Yahoo. That like the CEO or something. Do you know what I'm talking about? YouTube.
Marissa
I think so. Yeah, I think her.
That is 100% true. I 100%. Completely remember this. You're totally right.
And let me tell you about what Anthony did. So these women barely drank any of the Cristal, but we were just opening it and pouring it, and like they didn't touch any of it because there was like 50 bottles, right? Anthony collected all of it, and he was like, "Okay, so." If let's say, I have a kid one day and they get married, I can bust this out. And he's like, well, think about it. It's $1,000 a bottle. So he was like, if I put it in the soda stream and it's kind of fizzy, like how much would you pay? How much would you pay for that? You'd pay at least $100, right? Because it's $1,000. And he was like, and I just watched him just like carrying all these like Marissa Meyer's lipstick stained bottles out into his car, and I was like, this man is a genius. He still probably has those somewhere.
Right. He's like, well, if a Ferrari is $250,000, this is just a used one. I can probably get like $100 for this, right?
Yeah, like, that's what he was saying. He was like, well, I could probably sell it for at least $100 a bottle. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, no. Anthony was a true original.
Wait, Chris, so you said that you were a bad line cook.
I was well, I worked as a line cook in college, and then when when Anthony, it was literally the first time I Mission Street Food. As a Yelp Elite Twitter user, I had sort of emailed. I remember this like it was the first night he was going to do this, and I thought it was like the coolest idea that he was going to just rent this taco truck and cook his own food out of there. So I remember emailing somebody from Eater, which was like still pretty new at that time, and just being like, "Hey, this guy is doing this thing. You should write about it and see if people come." And I remember Anthony not telling Anthony that I had done that, and he had just sort of quietly opened his little truck on the corner of 21st and Cap or whatever, and there was like a line. I mean, because it's San Francisco, there's a line of like 60 people waiting for this thing outside. And I had done like the meanest thing you can do. I just like completely put him in the weeds. Didn't tell him I was going to do this. And I just saw him just like his heart sank because he's just like, fuck, I thought I would have to make like 3 things tonight. And so that was like the first night. And I remember jumping in, cooking with him. I'd met Anthony before, but he and I had cooked for one hot second. Do you remember that restaurant, Foreign Cinema, Young Me?
Of course.
Like
how could I forget?
It's like a total 2000s
douchebag
bullshit douche
white people.
Just the absolute worst.
Oh,
Anthony
God.
and I
The
cooked
food
there
was
and
fine.
both hated it. Yeah, the food was fine, but we cooked there, and that's where we had met and bonded over like how much we hated cooking there. But I was never good. I was cooking in restaurants was like, for me as like the well-to-do Southern California straight A student guy, was like, I'm gonna do this rebellious thing. Like, I'm gonna cook in a restaurant. Fuck you, Dad. Like, I'm gonna do this thing. But like, you cook in a restaurant, like people aren't there to just like goof off and like sow their oats. They're like really doing something professionally that they care about. And like, I love food, but if you're not fully bought into something, then you're just never gonna be that good at it. And I always had like my other one foot out of the kitchen. I was like, I do this to like because I think it's cool, but really I'm working on my degree over here. Like, this is what's going to get me places. So I was never that good.
And then after that, you moved on to start Lucky Peach. Can you tell us about that a little bit? Because I know that people are like probably dying to hear about this. Such a cult favorite. I
mean, how did we start? So I was doing this like double life thing of cooking and. I think, Danny, Young Me's ex Danny, like I remember we were cooking together in Mission Street Food. And I remember like 6 months after we had been cooking together, he was like, wait, you're not a cook? Like, I thought you just worked at restaurants. And I was like, no, I just like do this once a week basically, because I was at the other hand, I was interning at McSweeney's, and eventually, I worked from an intern to an editor, and then eventually became the publisher there. And I just didn't want to do food stuff. Like, I don't know. I don't know if like you felt this way at all, or
yes.
or either of you have ever felt this way, but just like food to me was like not like what I was meant to do. It's just like, I didn't take food seriously,
Yeah.
And I mean, like even like Young Me, even as like Mission Chinese was taking off, and like it was like taking our lives places. I was always just kind of like, is this really what we're doing? Like food stuff?
Yeah. No, I feel like I felt the same way.
Yeah. And so I didn't want to do it, and I didn't want to do food writing or food publishing or anything like that. I just didn't think I just thought like telling people where like the hottest donut is like so stupid, and like why would I do that? I work on important things. I'm an important guy. I write about human rights crises. Like I'm a real man. And finally we were going to do this project and at McSweeney's, and we were going to do this newspaper thing, and it was going to have this food section, and long story short, this kid was like in charge of the food section, and I remember he was like really into rugby.
Oh God.
Just like this white kid from Alaska who's just really into rugby.
Yeah.
And he was like, I think I figured out like the headline story is going to be like the best snacks to eat after like a hard rugby practice. Get the fuck out of here. Just get out of here.
Oh God.
And so like I took over at that point. Wait, can I tell a quick side story about that guy?
Of
One
course.
time I ended up at
I
was at like we were at a Korean restaurant. I don't know how I ended up eating with this kid. And we had like kimchi fried rice, and they had like a fried egg on top.
Yeah.
Sure.
And he goes like, first of all, he reaches for it like first, which I'm just like, who the fuck are you? What do you think you're doing here? He like reaches out to like get him some, and he's just like, he looks around, he's just like, I'm just gonna eat this yellow part if nobody wants it. Just, like,
oh my
like,
god, the fucking weirdest fucking
egg. And I was like, excuse me, sir. Anyway, so I took over this food section of this like hybrid or this like prototype newspaper. And like this is how I met Dave, and like the Momofuku cookbook was coming out, and like long story short, like I started realizing like a lot of people who you can care about food, you can work in food, and care about like art and music and other things and comedy. You can work as you can be a comedian, you can be an artist, you can be a musician, and care a ton about food, right? Like, you guys did something with Michelle's Honor, like that's a perfect example, like somebody who's like so good at what she does, but like also just can speak food really fluently. Like I started to find this gray area, and I was like, oh, if we could make something in this gray area in between where like it's not just about food or it's not just about art or music. Like that's really interesting. You can explain both things either way. And so whatever, long story short.
Can I say something about that really, really quick?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of Asian people are really good at that gray area. I don't know why. This might be a fucking unfair stereotype, but like most Asian people, like even though they're like whatever, like I'm a designer, whatever, they know about food. They're on top of it. And I feel like they are more than other. Like a white guy that works in like architecture is not gonna know anything about fucking food. You know, he's not gonna know where the best fucking Bumbaway is. Do you know what I mean? But you ask I feel like that's an Asian thing a little bit. That's all I want to say. What's the end of your story? And then what? So that was just the same.
Yeah. So you identified this gray area, like this intersection between food and fashion and comedy and music. And so was that Lucky Peach then?
Yeah, I mean that became Lucky Peach basically. And I was the publisher, and Dave and his and his writing partner at the time called me up and were like, do you want to start a magazine? We're making this TV show and there's all this leftover material. Do you want to make a magazine? And like McSweeney's didn't make any fucking money. So like, what did I care? I was just like, sure, let's do it. And so we started this magazine that I feel like, you know, the amazing thing about McSweeney's is like we always paid so much attention to graphic design and just worked with so many illustrators and artists. And, you know, like from the very first issue, we had like Lisa Hannawalt drawing cartoons for us, you know, and she's gone on to do such amazing things. And we had all these interesting people doing shit. And I think it, you know, I do feel like it left a legacy on. I remember like looking at the covers of Bon Appetit from like the time we started to the time like we ended. And like Bon Appetit used to be like, here's like 4 ways to impress your grandmother at Thanksgiving, like with like just like frilly serif text. And then like by the time we were done with Lucky Peach, it was just like, here's how to like squeeze your dick into a turkey hole. Here's like some drawings like we hand drew on here. And I was just like, who the fuck are you guys kidding?
I remember what the first time they fucking pulled that shit and they fucking knocked off Lucky Peach and it was like all like, well, yeah, like cartoony. And I remember, I think we were like around, like maybe you were there and you were like, what the fuck is this? And I was like, dude, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Whoa.
But, I mean, but the other, like it's true, but like, I don't know. I feel like Young Me, even at the time, like, because like people would also rip off Mission Chinese and Mission Street Food, and, like just like the whole aesthetic and the whole.
Remember
like,
that
vibe.
fucking? Do you remember that cuckoo guy that was like, oh, no, I shouldn't talk about people. Never mind. Never mind.
Damn.
Next.
Damn, Chris, you're so interesting. Chris is a fucking legend, Young Me. Holy shit,
true.
Just hearing your story, you are
so funny.
like you're like a savant. You're a trendsetter here because for real though, because with food, I would say in the last 10 years, and you know, I basically like was like a stupid UCLA student listening to Roy Choi talk about slinging kalbi kogi like tacos, but food is like, and chefs also in hand, like it just became like very sexy, you know. I mean, I don't think like the food industry, it had been overlooked, it's just been the same, but I think with, you know, like Kitchen Confidential kicking things off, and then, you know, chefs are like big time celebrities in the cultural zeitgeist, and food in general, like liking food is a predominant personality for so many people. Just like, I know where the coolest restaurants are. I'm a hip person. Food is my jam. And
I
hearing
totally
you talk about Lucky Peach, like it seems like you connected those dots and like kind of foresaw this in a way.
I think that, I mean, thank you. But I mean, I totally hear what you're saying. And I think like there's something really interesting about like food culture growing in America, right? You know, I think that in Asia, it's like Young Mi's talking about too, right? It's like, of course I know where like the best food is. Like that's just naturally how we live. Like that's just
I don't
thing,
even give a
right?
shit about it anymore, and I can still tell you where to eat. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. I don't give a shit.
Food is so embarrassing to me, but I know where to eat. Come on.
Right. Like I don't want to talk about it, but like I'm not going to eat poorly. What the fuck are you talking about?
Can we also, it's embarrassing, but I also know where to eat. Can we also look at the people that have absolutely no idea, that are usually white people, and they're like, hey, have you tried this burger place? And I'm like, it's like Bear Burger or something, and I'm like, you're gonna eat there? You're gonna eat a burger there? Anyway, go on.
Right. No, but like so much of that is also just like I found this place. I found this. You're like, what are you, a fucking explorer? Like there's nothing. You don't need to like find it. If it's like new, it doesn't mean it's like better. But I mean, no, I guess like food culture growing here definitely is a thing. I feel like people caring more, white architects included, caring more about food and where they get it.
I have a question for both Chris and you, Youngmi, and that is, you know, now we're like kind of poking fun at food media outlets like Bon Appetit and Infatuation, because, you know, now that everyone, even including the white architect, they're into food in some cursory level where, you know, you need to find a quick first date spot. You'll just go to like best first date spot in East Village, Infatuation, and they'll write in that kind of like tongue-in-cheek tone and prose that is very popular in food media. I feel like nowadays, like, it's kind of, that is sort of somewhat stale. There was a time when that was really fresh and new, like in the same way like Zagat is what? Is it popping off still? I have no idea. Like Yelp kind of replaced Zagat, and then Yelp's sort of stale now. So what's like exciting to you, like in this sort of realm or in this gray area? Like, where do you see it going next?
Well, I mean, it's hard because I actually think there's something to what Yelp was, like the original core of Yelp, that I think is important. I think there's, you know, like, I don't think you need this gatekeeper telling you like, this is the best. Because like I just think like half the time, like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Why is this the best? I remember having a conversation with like a food writer here in the Bay Area who's like, you know, he's rising in prominence, and I remember him like texting me and being like, hey, what's the best soup dumpling? And I was like, what do you mean? What do you think the best soup dumpling is? And he's like, I think it's this place. And I was like, no. But like, what do you think makes the best soup dumpling? And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, if you don't fucking know, why are you writing an article about what the best soup dumpling is? If you can't answer for me what it means for a soup dumpling to be the best soup dumpling, why the fuck are you telling anybody where the best soup dumpling is? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. If you can't tell me like a preference of like the skin or like the, you know, fat ratio or anything like that, then like, I don't care what you have to say. So, and I'm not saying like everyone has to be like talk about food on some molecular level, but I think there's something else about like the populist thing of like Yelp people were not critics, and they were like very much about like utility. I think it became a little too much about like, am I a Yelp elite person? And like, you know, obviously like the structure with Yelp made it a little bit too like, you know, a little less honest than it could have been. I think the future is a little bit more like, it's got to be more like to the second, right? It's like if you're at a restaurant, maybe this restaurant was amazing when I visited it 6 months ago, but like so much shit happens in a restaurant in 6 months. So much happens in like 2 days. Like, I want to know what's great today, like right now. And like no critics can be able to do that, but like people can. You know, and I think like in Asia, they do that a lot more as well. You know, like I remember reading about this in I think in like Malaysia, there were like 3 different laksa shops like on 3 corners, all selling the same curry laksa. But like it's the same fucking thing. It didn't, you know, like every single restaurant was the same one, but there was like this robust like discussion every day of like, this one's better today because like this, I saw this lady like rinsing her fish. I don't know.
Right.
So you're saying you gotta, and the future is gonna be ways, but food. So
it's gonna be ways, but food. Yeah, totally.
Like, I just had this fucking bomb ass soup dumpling at this place right now.
It's also
get your ass over here,
and it's also gonna be more like, it's gonna be the way. It's ways of food, but it's also gonna be more like what Young Mi was just saying, where it's like. maybe white architect guys telling me this is the best restaurant, but like I don't trust white architect, but like I trust Young Me, and so like maybe it's more tailored to like who am I following, like whose advice do I trust, and maybe I think I trust Young Me, right? And maybe like I go to the like 6 restaurants she's gone to and I order what she's said, but like now I know that like, oh, maybe like her taste and my taste are actually different. So like I want like a truer representation of recommendations for me. You know, I think like that's probably the future. I mean, it's also like it sounds good on paper. It's also so fucking dystopian. It's like
it's like I think people, well, you know, like how TikTok has really altered our minds so much in the few years that it's been popular. I make a lot of food related TikToks, and I have like a following of people that like me on TikTok. And because I talk about a restaurant, or because I'll make something, they will do it. And it's like, it's not even like, I don't even know if they like the flavors, but they're just like, well, I just like her, so I'm going to do this too. And so it's like, it's totally changed. And you know, like the old school way, and like to your point about this food critic that was like, oh, where's the best soup dumpling? There's so many fucking problems with that. And to be honest with you, I'm in disbelief that they're still fucking doing that. That there's still fucking a white critic somewhere that's in his 50s thinking that
this dude's not a white dude, but yes,
okay.
no, totally.
Well, yeah, I don't know who this person was, but like, you know, there's still solidly food writer critics that are employed full time by real magazines or newspapers that are fucking 50-year-old white men, and they're like, let me tell you about the fucking laksa. You know, and it's just like, how to know, sir? No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No one cares.
I think that, let me think here. I wonder if I could get in trouble for breaking an NDA. Whatever. I remember, so I was on the James Beard Restaurant Award Committee for 4 or 5 years. And you know, you basically, you know, you travel around, you have like 4 or 5 meetings a year with like 25, 30 other restaurant critics, although like I was not a restaurant critic. And you meet up in cities that we haven't, like none of us have had like the opportunity to really explore. So we go to places where like, oh, we really need to like explore the Midwest more. So like, let's all have a meeting there, and we'll all eat, and we'll have our discussions, and we'll like help discuss, like determine the ballots and talk about nominations and things. Yeah. And I remember like going out to dinner one night, and I remember it had been a couple years already that I've been on this committee, and somebody saying like, well, Chris, you were the first non-white person to ever be on the committee, right? And I was like, wait, what? Like, that's like a really intense thing to tell somebody after like, you've been in a room with them for 2 or 3 years, that like you were the first one to ever come in this room. Like I just like it, and it made me feel so uncomfortable to just know that like, and I walked in that room the first time, everyone in everyone's minds, they were like, here comes the first non-white person. Like, we did it. We fucking did it.
Diversity, we did it.
Yeah. So.
And just like, okay, just like really quick, speaking to that, just like loosely on that topic, like what I was talking about with the TikTok thing, the problem with food and taste in food is it's purely subjective, you know? It doesn't fucking matter if you are fucking Sir Williams the 15th and you grew up eating fucking canapes or whatever the fuck. You probably have a fucking shitty palate probably, because you've never had anything spicier than black pepper. You know what I mean? So why the fuck did food media think that for however many fucking hundreds of years that we're gonna write about it, like the subjective thing with any sort of like credential stake in it. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like I find that so offensive.
I also think it's
so
also but it's also part like it's a balance too, though, because the consumer's like, I'm a consumer, like I'm dumb, I don't know anything, you know, like I want an article to just tell me what's good, and I'm not gonna think anything beyond that and just go there.
And that's totally fair. I mean, it's like you don't want to, like, the average person's just like, I don't care about whatever. Like now, like food media has swung the complete other direction, right? And like every single food article is a lesson. Everything is like some cultural lesson for us to learn. But like, I think that that's probably really frustrating to the average food person who's just like, wait, but is the food good? should I go to this restaurant? Like, how much does it cost? You
Oh
didn't
my
put the
God.
address in here. You just told me about
Like-
like the colonial history of this country and how like I'm a bad person, but like I don't know.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with recipes. Like, I just want the recipe, bro. Like, I don't need to
Dude.
hear like your intergenerational trauma that you've been carrying with your great grandmother.
Oh my God.
But,
Yeah. No, I feel you. No, but like also, yeah, you're right. Like people just want like something. People that's the thing. Like it's subjective. So they just want to like trust somebody, and
Yeah.
the whole like trauma story thing. I don't know. I feel like that's just like anyway. Yeah.
I feel like it was, like obviously like that was too much food got talked about like out of context and like all of that was stripped away for sure. But I'm just saying like there's some fucking middle ground here, right? Like I think everybody's sort of like
some middle ground.
overcorrecting and just trying to like backfill and be like, yeah, we've been like this the whole time. Like we've cared about this, it's just like, it's dishonest. Like that's the part that bums me out is like,
Oh my God.
it's too
It is.
dishonest.
And then I also feel like white people resent that because then they're like, oh, why we gotta fucking talk about your Chinese grandma? Fuck you! I don't care about Asians. Like, and then they like have
That's
this like
what my
growing
wife
resentment.
says every time I talk about my grandma. She's just like, "Oh, can we just eat fucking dinner, Chris? We need the goddamn lesson of your family."
Get
Like,
another
I
fucking
know.
poem about cherry blossom blooming in the spring. Jesus Christ!
She's like, I know. The dumplings look like the crescent moon on the Yangtze River. I get it, dude. Can we just eat? The kids are starving. No.
Okay, Chris. Well, so far on this podcast, you have lived up to your namesake. You are the funniest, naturally funny, organic, farm to table human beings that I've ever met. And we had this question for you. And back in the day when you were a bad line cook and you had one foot out the door, did you ever consider doing comedy?
No, I never ever considered it.
Why do you think that is? This is a real question for you, Chris. For some reason, I feel like you should answer this. Why are the I went to a stand-up comedy show yesterday because I was on the show, and I was in the fucking green room with the fucking 10 of the most miserable, unfunniest humans ever, and I was like, what the fuck are you guys doing in comedy? Like, all of them are like that. Why are they? Why do you think?
When you got into comedy, young me, I was like, that is so impressive. Like, that's so impressive. I remember you being like, nobody knows that like I always wanted to do this and I'm going to do it. And I was also like, young me is fucking funny as hell. Like we laughed when we would travel, we would just like laugh so hard. Yeah. And I was like, that makes sense. But like on some level I was also like, wait, what? Like you can just do that? You can just be a comedian? Like, I guess you guys saying, oh, Chris, you're really funny. Why don't you think about comedy? To me is like, you can jump really high. Why aren't you an astronaut? Like, it just like didn't fucking occur to me that that's like a thing. I have so much respect for what it is, And like, if I sit here and think about like, oh, why would I not do comedy? I think like getting like a big, is this true or not? Like, I feel like just getting a true laugh for something that you feel is like genuinely your joke must be so hard. Like I can imagine like telling jokes and being like, well,
I wouldn't know. No one has
ever.
Yeah. I would not know. No one has ever laughed at anything that I've ever said on stage. So
no,
but I mean that's
doing that anti-comedy thing, young me.
Yeah, you're supposed
cool,
to.
Man.
That thing that's all the rage, that anti-comedy shit that's going on right now. I love it. No, but like I just feel like every time I would say something funny, it would just be like in the back of my head, I'd be like, well, I definitely just stole that from a TV show I saw. So like, I'll just
so is that your secret? Everything that you ever say is from Rick and Morty or something. I'm like, Chris is so funny. I've never seen Rick and Morty.
Aliens that crawl up your butt.
So every day Chris is on deadline. He's like, ooh, Dan Harmon just signed $100 million CBS deal. Let's fucking go. I can be funny for another 10 years.
I fucking wish. No, I have so much respect for it. I just think like, I don't know. Do you guys ever feel this thing though of, I don't really know how to be like performative with comedy. Like, I don't know. Like I guess there's like, I don't want to call it dishonest because it's just like it's part of the craft. But like I have a hard time telling a joke if I'm not telling like exactly what truly happened in my life. Like I have a hard time being like embellishing it for effect, right? Like you feel like
100%.
They're gonna know. They're gonna call me out.
Yeah, no, it varies comedian to comedian, but I could never sell anything that was embellished or fake to me, and that's why I'm a bad stand-up comedian, Chris.
You're like, and that's the joke. I mean, it's not that funny, but it really happened. So anyway, thanks everybody.
That's what happens.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I'm sure that like I do embellish stuff a little bit, but I don't know. Maybe I don't. I haven't done like traditional stand-up comedy in so long now. So.
But it's not even, yeah, I mean, like, I don't want to, like, mischaracterize it as, like, embellishment. You're just, like, you're working on a joke. You're not telling a story from your life. Like, that's, like, comedy is, like, coming up with bits and jokes, right? It's just, like, I have a hard time getting up there and, like, I'm one of those lame people who watches a show and I'm just like, I wonder if that really happened. I wonder, like, is this the first time he's told anybody this? This is a new bit. Just, like, I want to know if it's true. Like, I'm like a dad watching TV, just, like, if you find out it wasn't a true story, you're just like, oh, I don't care about this. So.
Yeah, I feel like it kind of loses something. Whenever I hear like a stand-up comedian going, so I was having sex the other night, I'm like, yeah, right. Yeah, right.
I've been telling that joke for the last 3 years, buddy.
Yeah, right. You're wearing one of those like newsboy caps. You're wearing like those like hiking shoes with the bootleg jeans, huh?
You just don't buy the premise that they were having sex at all. That's fucking best.
Yeah, right.
That's amazing.
No, but it is interesting why naturally funny people don't do. I always wondered that. I guess that's like that's like question for more like comedians. I guess.
Let me ask you guys. No, let me ask you guys then. You just said it, Young Me. Like when you guys hang out with other comedians, are comedians always funny in person? Are they like funny people though?
They're literally the opposite of funny.
Depends.
Right.
No. I think Youngmi and I are different in this aspect. Youngmi, I think you're very like true to who you are on stage, but I have like a very much an on-off switch. And I think people who are like it depends, it varies. There's people who are like constantly on, and I find that equally annoying as well. It's like miserable, mopey comedians.
But somehow they're not funny. They're on, but they're just not hitting.
But I think like a lot of really funny comedians, like really great comedians, don't play as like funny when you're just hanging out with them. You know what I mean? Like I don't know that there's like a direct translation necessarily.
Yeah,
but like
I mean, there's people like Jerry Seinfeld who they're just like annoying all the time, and like that's their thing.
Yeah, exactly. So if I was like one of the most naturally annoying people in the world, then I would understand why you were asking me why I wasn't a comedian.
I have to say that when I was doing a lot of stand-up, like a bunch of shows every night, I was so tired that in between when I was talking to other stand-up comedians, I would be just so dry. Like I wouldn't expel zero, because it was it's like expelling energy to do that, right?
Totally.
So I just be like, oh my God, hello, like that.
It's maybe also like a service that you're doing, right? It's like it's not it's work because you're like, I'm giving you this energy to make you laugh. Like that takes a lot out of you, I'm sure. What am I fucking talking about? Don't make me talk about comedy more like I know what I'm talking about. I look like I sound like a fucking idiot.
I mean, you know more than they do.
All right, Chris. We're gonna transition into our. We're gonna get to know about you on a more deep level here. Rapid fire. What is something you're loving right now?
Something I'm loving right now. Okay, I'm gonna say something that's gonna sound super annoying. But then by the end of my explanation, I want you to see if I want to know if it feels less annoying. I really am loving my wife right now.
Aww.
Just really loving it. No, don't. I know it's like the most annoying thing in the world to hear. But here's the thing. It like happened all of a sudden. It happened like 6 or 8. I mean, like Young Me was at my wedding. It was like 7 years ago. Like she and I have been together forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
Like, you know, love, like your relationship, like a long-term relationship doesn't just like keep on growing and like how much you're like in love with your person, right? It just like hopefully settles into like an acceptable place of like being in love with somebody, right? Like that's how it works. But like 6 or 8 months ago, something fucking broke like in my brain where I just started feeling like this weird like desperation to like make my wife love me like when we first met. And I was, or not when we first met, when I first convinced her to finally date me, like something weird happened. And like, I want to go to like the gory details of it, but like something happened and I've been like trying to understand this for like 8 months, like why all of a sudden, like I've just like completely become a crazy person about my wife who I've known for fucking 15 years.
Yeah.
And
I like how you're framing it as a neurological disorder.
No, because this is what I arrived at. No, I am Brian because it like happened like instantaneously, like a car accident. And here's what I arrived at. I think that because I was thinking about this question, I know you guys are gonna ask this, and like I think maybe I have Stockholm syndrome. Like I think that maybe like I've spent this whole fucking time like cooped up here during the pandemic with my wife, and like I have fallen in love with my captor.
And does your wife find that very romantic when you share these feelings about her?
No, but like it's actually been like a crazy thing because she's just like, you know, it would be a weird thing if you had been together with somebody for 10 years and then just like all of a sudden they were just like, I just love you so much. I'm just so into you. Blah, blah. You'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with you, dude?
Yeah.
Like,
so she noticed. Fuck? She was like, what's going on?
100%. 100% she noticed. And we had to have like conversation. I mean, she's like, this is great. I love it. It's just like, like, I don't understand what's happening with you. Like something is wrong with you.
Well, I feel like how you described it was very Stockholm syndrome-y sounding. You're like, I felt the need to make her happy and love me.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I think it might be, I think that I may have had a breakthrough.
Nice.
Just thinking about this question for your show. So that's what I'm loving right now.
I feel like you've always been extremely in love with your wife. Since I've known you.
It's true. It's
for
true.
Good reason.
Although, like, I mean, we're going so long, but I'll tell you a quick story though. Like, my daughter likes to look at pictures on our phone. You know, like everybody, like now on our phones, like every photo we've had from here until eternity is like documented. Mm-hmm. And I was like scrolling through this period of like a few months, like a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And we were looking at my wife's phone, like I was showing my daughter all these photos, and I was like, I'm not in any of these photos for like a 6-month period. Like we may as well just like not have been together. And she was like, oh yeah, I think we had like a rough patch. And I was like, I didn't even know we had a rough patch. So I don't even know. So I feel like, yes, I've always loved my wife, but I guess there was like rough patches. I don't know, man. This is just getting too feelingy. I'm an Asian feeling too much right now.
No, that there's never enough. We like the more the better.
Too much.
The
feeling.
more Asian feelings.
Conversely, Chris, what's something you're hating right now?
What am I hating? I hate the fact that I'm turning 40 this year. I know it's like very cliche, but it's like really bumming me out. For a very Asian reason, though. What? I feel like as an Asian overachiever, like you always feel like my whole life I've always been like, oh, you're precocious. Like, oh, you're so young to be doing this thing. Oh, like that's so crazy that you're already doing that. Like, oh, you've done this. Yeah. But like when you're 40, like there's nothing that you want to be like ahead of anymore. Like you're too old to be considered like too young to have done something. And if you're like 40 and you're like, you're too young to have done that, it's like all bad shit, right? It's like, whoa, hey, you got hemorrhoids already. Cool. That's great, man. Congratulations, dude. Like, or like, just like, oh, hey, like the plaque buildup in your cholesterol is so high, man. Like you're so early on that. Like your hair's thinning. Like
good job.
It sucks to be like good job. Like there's nothing to be like ahead of or like precocious about when you're 40. I mean, whatever. I'm just being a little baby about it, but I really am. I didn't think I would hate turning 40. But like I'm being a real Carrie about this, guys. Is that still a reference? Is that still a thing that people say?
What? Wait, who was the person that had the funniest joke? I'm trying to Google it right now. I don't remember who said this joke, but there's a stand-up comedian that said, "I just turned 40, which sucks because the only thing I can be too young for now is to die or to date Cher."
I think it was on a Rick and Morty. I think I just took it from a Rick.
That was Rick and Morty. That was Rick and Morty. I was like, "You're so funny, Chris. Did you make that up?"
What's that comedian? What's his name? Oh, his name's Morty.
Morty. No, that would bum me out to turn 40. I mean, I'm 37, and in my head, I already tell people I'm almost 40 because I'm preparing myself. I feel like a 3.5 years of like buffer zone is how much time I need to get used to it.
I feel the same.
Well, you look the same as when I met you, and I think you were 22 then. So you either look like shit when you were 22, or you look great for 40. So there you go.
I definitely look like shit for 22, but I definitely look older now. You guys made me sad on your podcast. Never mind.
Sorry. Well, now that you're sad, let's get to the part that we're going to hide behind the Patreon paywall. Listeners, if you're listening to this, to hear Chris Ying's answer to the next question, you're going to have to go to our Patreon at patreon.com/feelingasian. And then he's going to get real with it and answer the question. Chris, what is something that you're ashamed of?
Well, Chris, thank you for opening up your hearts to us and being so vulnerable and honest. But before we let you go, we like to ask all of our guests this one last question, and that is, what is something that you're proud of?
I don't know, man. I'm not proud of anything. I was proud of I don't know. I'm proud of I took the LSAT when I was going to go to law school. I did well.
Nice.
I did well on my LSATs.
Nice.
No, what am I proud of? I had this moment like over the holidays where I saw my sister and her kids, my niece and nephew. I hadn't seen them for a while, and they're both in college. And my niece was like, and this totally applies to the fact that like I'm on the show with you, and Young Me is my friend. We've been together, like known each other for so long. Like,
yeah.
My niece was like, "Man, Uncle Chris's friends are so cool." I was like, you know what? I do have a lot of friends who like did cool shit. Like I have a lot of friends who like I met before they were like doing interesting stuff. When like before like Young Me and I, when we met, we were just like, she was waiting tables and I was pretending to be a fucking cook. And like I do tend to.
I was
be around a lot of people.
I was pretending to wait tables too. So.
But I've met a lot of people. Like I have friends who have done impressive stuff, and I know that's like a cop out, but like I feel proud to like be surrounded with people who like I really admire.
That is a cop out. I don't know if I'm okay with that answer.
I'm also proud of my LSAT score. I did really well on the LSATs. Young Me, what do you want from me?
Cop out or not, Chris, I do hope that you feel that way about yourself too, because this is my first time meeting you, and I think hearing your life story and the work that you've done, you're really fucking cool. Like as soon as this ends, I'm gonna be like, Young Me, why didn't we have him on sooner?
Brian's gonna yell at me.
Sick.
This is what I said to Helen. Do you know Helen Cho? She was on our podcast a few weeks ago. She also she's like literally is friends with every celebrity. Well, of course crazy. You know Helen, like every single big time celebrity. And I'm like, not that I value celebrities over other people. I'm not. Yeah, I was gonna make a joke. Never mind. But like, I was like telling Helen, like, what do you like? Look at your friends, dude. They're amazing. Why do you think they're friends with you? It's because you're also amazing. And that's what I'm gonna say to you. I feel like because you are also saying the same thing. You're saying all these friends are amazing, and I feel like the common denominator is you. So yeah, if you can say that about your friends, you say that about yourself.
Man, Feelingasian just like makes you feel better. This is amazing. This is an amazing session. Thank you guys.
A session.
I mean, show.
We'll send you our invoice.
Chris, thank you again. And for our listeners, where can they find you online?
I don't know. I don't know where you find me. I guess you can find me
at David Chang on Instagram.
At David Chang. Just follow at David
Dave Chang.
And be like, who's everywhere. That other guy in the background? Exactly.
Oh my God, Chris, weren't you like, wasn't there a time that people thought you were Dave Chang? Did that happen a lot? I feel like that happened a lot because you used to hang out with them all the time. And people would be like rolling out the red carpet and be like, Dave Chang is here. Like, I feel like we went to eat a few times and people are like, oh my God, it's Dave Chang.
Well, I mean, that's like the crazier ones. It happens a lot. It used to happen more. Which is like, I don't know how to take that. But like, sometimes it would happen when, okay, this makes some sense. Like, I'm at a party. Dave is also here. I'm talking to somebody that Dave knows. I remember one time, like, a Momofuku cook came up to like the person I was talking to and was like, what did Dave want? Is everything okay? And they were like, that's not your boss, dude. That's like a completely different Asian dude. That makes some sense. Like, I'm in the room. But there have like legitimately been times where I'm just like somewhere in the world and someone's like, you're David, right? And I'm just like, why do you think I'm just like a guy? I'm just a random Chinese
my
guy
God.
walking around here, like the Korean guy you're looking for. The Korean guy you're looking for is like much bigger, and he's on the other side of the country. Like, why would I be at this auto parts store looking for like wiper fluid? Like, what are you
so
fucking
funny.
talking about? But
That is
I don't know
so
what it's about.
funny.
It's bad.
I
Oh
love
my
that.
God. Dave. Well, they can find you at Dave Chang.
Yeah, find me at Dave Chang.
Those listeners.
Yep.
Exactly. All right.
And how about you,
And what
Brian?
about Young Me?
Oh, you can find me at YM Mayor or Young Me Mayor on TikTok. And how about you, Brian?
You guys can find me at It's Brian Park and follow our podcast on socials at Feeling Asian Podcast. And yeah, if you like it, check us out on Patreon too at patreon.com/feelingasian. And that's it. Bye, everyone.
Bye.